I don't think of my age very much. I guess you could say you know, I was the youngest in my family, and I've always felt myself to be young somehow. And my personality in a lot of ways is, about age 12 or something like that. So, which has some pitfalls. But it's also got this, that, that feeling that you get at that age that life's opening up.
Yeah.
There's this, the world gets bigger.
I am thrilled to have internationally renowned and celebrated visual artist Stephen Pare join me and all of you who are watching and listening today as we talk about the arts, we talk about creativity, and we talk about the journey of life that we are all on. And Stephen is the son of a nuclear physicist and a learning disabilities teacher mom. He grew up on a wooded ridge in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. In school, his classmates were the children of scientists and children of coal miners, an interesting contrast. He holds degrees in German and English literatures, music, and electronics technology, as well as a master's degree in fine arts and studio art. He's very, very humble. He's multilingual, English, French, German, and Italian. As he says, maybe not fluently, but he certainly can get by in at least 4 languages. And his artwork is visible and presented in galleries, art fairs in Italy and Spain and Switzerland. And he keeps expanding his reach. And he has an art website, which I'll share at the end of our time together. A 20-page demo of his book may be viewed there. His mostly daily production of artworks and flash fictions may be viewed on Instagram under the username Verbonet. Hope I pronounced that right. Is that right? Verbonet?
Verbonet, I think.
Verbonet.
Yes.
Verbonet. What does Verbonet mean?
Well, it's a little bit, it's one of those things that's maybe a little bit too cute. But anyway, you could look him up. Okay. He was a composer. And it's interesting. He had 2 names. He's also known by a very different name, Ghislain. I liked that about him. And it turns out he's quite an interesting composer, although even for people who know about Renaissance music, he's not very well known. But yes, quite a lovely composer. And it's also thought that he might have been a spy. So I like that sort of, that combination of things and things that don't go together, going together.
So I think, if there were things, if we were in a course, I would say that's a writer downer, because I think that what Stephen just pointed to is very much part of who he is, how that gets revealed in his artwork. The interesting thing about things that wouldn't necessarily seem to go together, there's a dynamic tension, and somehow as an artist, he takes those things that are somewhat unexpected. I think that's part of the surprise of it. So here's a not very well-known Renaissance composer who might have been a spy. So there's that interesting little twist. And I think your artwork reflects that. So thank you for sharing what the meaning of that is to you.
If I may, there's one more thing in there, and that's that the name starts with verb, V-E-R-B, which is actually the French word for word. And part of the reason I chose that is that thanks to Instagram, I started writing. So when I write stories, I started doing that really in a few months, the first few months after I started posting images on Instagram, and this new way of working that I discovered when I found a community on Instagram, artists who were making art with mobile devices. This really kind of, in a way, revolutionary approach, or many different approaches, really. Anyway, something about doing that, suddenly I was writing stories that went along with my pictures. And I've got quite a collection at this point, including that book you mentioned. So the book's got about 125 stories, and they all started as quite short things. There's a whole thing called flash fiction, which I thought I had invented, but of course, you don't. Nobody invents anything. I don't know. Somehow they appear. It's sort of the kind of fiction that that suits the internet. This really short kind of thing, short and it, and somehow it seemed to fit the pictures I was doing, and so somebody who was following me, he was actually an architect from London, a very interesting photographer also, said, "I like your flash fictions," and I had never heard that before, but I embrace it. People also say microfictions and other things. I'm going to keep talking if you don't stop me.
I love you. No, it's fabulous. It's fabulous. It's fabulous. I want to put a pause in, and because the question that I wanted to ask you to start, and I think you're revealing it, which is what I love about it. At this point in your life, what matters most to you? What's the most important thing?
Well, it's achievement. I feel, I've discovered things. I've discovered something new. And in a way, it's more than one thing, but in a way, it's one single sort of multi-disciplinary vision. Okay. So artworks you can hang on the wall are part of it, and stories are part of it, and sound, music, including my voice, are part of it. And I'm just starting to figure out how to bring all those things together in video, and I think maybe installation, will be coming along. Yeah, in that book, I'm producing the book as a precious object, as something that, you more than a coffee table book.
So if you could, as I'm listening to you, if there were something out of all of it that you'd want to be known for, what would that be?
Here, I'm usually pretty glib. I've usually got a good answer. Oh, here's a glib answer for you. The next thing that I do.
I love it. It's great. I love it. I love it. I want to go back. So Stephen, thank you, by the way, as you're sharing and it's unfolding, because my mind is tracking with you. And what you talked about inside of the art of aliveness and our spirit soaring and doing what we love and the journey of life. And something you said about, to me, it was a big deal that as a mature adult with a broad life experience, living all over the country, that you said, I'm going to go back and get an MFA as an adult? I would imagine that you may have been one of the most mature people that was in your program. Is that accurate?
I was certainly the oldest.
Right. Okay, good. So there were more candles on your birthday cakes than maybe other people's.
Well, including the faculty. So
right. So everybody.
It's kind of an inverted situation there.
So if we work backwards, right? I'm hearing a lot of different things. This is what I want to reflect back. A studio art degree is kind of a traditional degree. And the biggest thing that I'm struck by with you as an artist is being a contemporary artist against kind of the classical model of artwork as painting. When you're talking about Instagram and digital, it is a whole other world of creative expression. And as you're talking about the flash stories, you're building something that's so, to me, out of the box, and so present and future driven against the construct of a classical MFA. So what was it in your journey that got you to the MFA? Because we know where you've gone with it, but what got you there? Because that was, and that's almost at this point 15 years ago. Not quite that long, but 10 years ago, going back, and pivoting and saying, all right, I'm going to go get an FMA. And like you said, on behalf of something that may have been different than what it ended up being. So I'm really curious, and I think our listeners and viewers would be fascinated by what was it that propelled you to say, I'm going to go back and get an MFA?
I guess there's never more than one. There's never only one thing. I sought out advice. So I think probably now that advice was intended for someone else. I mean, for some other person's ambitions in the art world. And I mean, that's fine. Let's say, I made good use of it, but I would not say that I connected very well with what was being offered in the program or with my peers in the program or with the faculty either. So it was quite an effort, getting some recognition for what I was doing, some understanding even. I don't regret this at all, especially now. I was kind of annoyed at the time. But I did have, something, I think one strength I brought to that experience was that I don't think of my age very much. I guess you could say I was the youngest in my family, and I've always felt myself to be young somehow. And my personality in a lot of ways is, about age 12 or something like that. So, which has some pitfalls. But it's also got this, that feeling that you get at that age, that life's opening up.
Yeah.
There's this, the world gets bigger. In some cases, I think that was true for me, that, over the space of a year, the world gets a lot bigger. And that's sort of something I've continued with in my life. It didn't seem it seemed, it was a big practical transition, but it was also something that was very real for me. Let's see, what's the word? Possible.
Yeah.
It was possible that I could go back to school and, make that sort of long-term commitment and, and do something with it. It is so ironic in a way as I think back how damn difficult it was. Just, communicating. That was the really most valuable thing, was just trying to figure out how to communicate to people what I was doing or what I thought I was doing. And I don't know.
One of the things, so
yeah,
also something though that I want to point to, that I'm so curious for us and for us, our peers, future generations, about what is it that has us as we go through. You can see my age is merely the number of years the world has been enjoying you.
Enjoying you, yeah.
Right? It's agelessness and timelessness. And, when you said that typically as we progress, people, and this is the inquiry that I'm in, that typically people don't look at what's in front of them and the time in front as bigger, as expansive, as a space to go and create the what's next. And there's something so profound in the way you said that, which is that energy and enthusiasm of a 12-year-old. That as we progress in life, we see less possibility instead of more possibility or equal possibility, whatever way we want to say it. So there's something very profound in the way that you articulated that. And I think a lot of times, that it's, how we as adults articulate it is, well, like I'm about 15 maybe, which is good. It's good to be 15 forever. Maybe sometimes it's not so good, but there's a spirit and a heart and a soul in that the way you articulated it, like the ice cream cones that are in the background as I am looking at it. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect because that's part of that spirit. So that's one thing I just think it's the way you articulated it. I haven't heard it said quite that way before. And one of the things that you had said to me, and I'm curious, if you look back when you say, and you had shared with me that you were doing something, you're in a somewhat, my perception, a traditional program, and yet you have a vision. You're in a program to be developing as an artist, a creator, and yet you have a vision, and people looked at you and said, "What are you doing?" Well, I think it's fascinating. If this is capturing it, right as you've shared it with me, what are you doing? They didn't get it, but guess what? You're now international. You are an internationally renowned writer. Like you were saying, it's not only that you've got, I'm assuming that you have hands on, like you know how to pick up a pen or a paintbrush and paint on a canvas or draw. I'm assuming. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm not very good at drawing. Actually.
But I'm saying, but you know how to. Do you know how to draw? Qualitatively, are you good or bad?
I guess that's one of those questions.
Paintbrush or draw.
If you ask somebody who teaches drawing, they'll tell you you know how to draw. I have shockingly little experience doing actual drawing, and so I do use my finger when I'm working. I mean, you can paint on an iPad, with your finger. And I never get tired of that. That's a little bit like playing in the dirt,
So you're in now you can tell me if this is accurate. You're in a traditional program, and yet you're not. To me, you are a visual artist, and visual world is your medium, and you're also a writer. right? So you're saying you do stories, but
Mhm.
the transition, I think what I didn't know about you and what I'm fascinated about in talking to you today is this transition that has you be on the leading edge, in my opinion, in this whole world of digital. And you've shared with me about when you got your camera when you were a kid, your dad and you and your cameras.
I
And
wasn't a kid.
how old were you? I thought you
No,
were
this is
young. The
no,
camera
I
was
wasn't
like,
young. This is
how old were you
2000
then?
2004.
Okay. So you were an adult.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was 50.
That's amazing. Okay. As part of this whole story. So talk about that. Okay. Because that to me kind of ties it together with what you're doing with all of these multidimensional platforms. And Stephen, I think again, for this is like the messaging for generations to come that I look at you and you have my experience of it is you dove into the technology and as an artist to be in an arena that's revolutionary, that was certainly, it's easy to go and do a class with a canvas and a paintbrush, in a traditional creative expression, but that you have gone into a whole other dimension. And I think about the world of not NFTs, you know better than I do. What's the art selling, instead of the physical art or the computer, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you
Oh my
you do
what
mean NFTs.
NFTs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As for all of us, what? That can't be possible. So to me, you are in that world. And what was that journey that got you there? It's extraordinary and it's really inspiring. So can you speak to that? Because I think you're on the leading edge. There may be other people, but I'm not having a conversation with other people. I'm with you.
Well, sometimes in having conversations like this, I feel I keep turning the question around, and I'd like to do that actually. So here's the thing. I was passionate about art. I mean, about other people's art, about the classics, especially interested in architecture. But when I was young, and I collected art books. I loved the work of Paul Klee, if you know that artist, very special artist for me. And there are some other ones who've meant a lot to me, and just accidental. I had accidental contact with certain things and made some discoveries. And how I see my work is it's despite the fact that I'm making it on digital devices and I'm painting with my finger on an iPad and I'm doing all the different things that are possible today. I, I'm going to take that back. I'm not by any means doing all the things. Like I think most artists, I pick out a few things that I'm doing and do them over and over again, you know. But at the same time, I've always had in mind painters of the past and, discovering something, inventing something that, let me put it this way, inventing something that's a discovery of something that I've already found in the past. And it's an important part of my mission as an artist. It's is to connect with our great history. And I'm, a typical sort of what, student from the late 20th and early 21st centuries. in that my vision of that is pretty broad. I mean, I adore, you know, Indian art, Southeast Asian art, and you know, Persian art from 500 years ago, and a lot of it's a much more expanded than, you know, idea of what our history is than just the, you know, what they call the canon, you know, the sort of that through line where you go, you know, Jackson Pollock, Picasso, you know, I don't know, Monet, Degas, or something like that. And, you know, they're just a few high points that, you know, in each generation going back to, I don't know, I don't know where it goes back to exactly. Ancient Greece, I guess.
As also, as my undergraduate degree is in art history.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was a curatorial assistant in the Philadelphia Museum of Art when I graduated from college, the print department.
Yeah.
And the orientation, the academic orientation is Western European art. And art as an expression of culture, of humanity, back to cave paintings. There's always been something, you know, of the human spirit that wants to get expressed through some kind of visual representation. You know, and then the politics of it. So I love what you're saying because it's so broad. And our perspective, at least as a student, of what got deified was very, very narrow versus the history globally of creative expression and depth and richness and the expression of cultures. So I just want to, you know, and I don't know if I don't know if you and I had ever talked about that.
I don't think so. And it's such an interesting discussion, isn't it? I think one of the pitfalls is that then you throw out the whatever, you know, the old white guys.
Yes.
So let's not throw them out. I mean, you know, Picasso is a very interesting artist.
Well, and you know, it's that whole thing. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so I don't know that I've heard you articulate what your mission is with all of this at this point in time in your life.
Well, I see myself as part of something that's happening now. I mean, you know, I've got my view of the history of art. A lot of artists are not so interested in the history, and I think I heard once, you know, I think this had to do with musicians, that there are two kinds, you know, the kinds that pay attention to other people and the kinds that don't. Mm-hmm. So, and I think it's equally valid. You know, the people that are just deep into their technique and aren't too concerned about how they're connecting with history or connecting even, you know, maybe with anyone outside their immediate circle. It does help to have a circle, that's for sure. But I'm one of those people who's, you know, I want more of the past. Mm-hmm. That's part of my mission, is to connect. Because it's kind of my aesthetic mission. And so I won't, you know, I'm not going to propose that I'm this pivotal figure in art history or something like that. Not yet, anyway.
I was going to say, just, you need to put a yet on that. But, you know, I think I shared with, you know, students, by the way, which is about musicians. And I don't remember if I shared this with you or not. When I was growing up in fourth grade, my fourth grade teacher had an art box in the closet where all the pens and paper and all that stuff. And we could go, and if we wanted to draw or anything that we had creative, we could put it in the art box. And I wanted to be a fashion illustrator. So I would do all kinds of fashion drawings. And my dad was an artist, and I would sit there and I would do my drawings out of perspective. You know, I could just see them. They definitely look like Egyptian art. There you go. Really were that primitive. They did. They
see, that's good. I like that.
Egyptian art.
Great.
And he would encourage me. And I grew up in Philadelphia. And in those days, there was the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Philadelphia Bulletin. And I think it was in the Inquirer, and it was the days, and I can't remember who the artist was, but it was the days of fashion illustration. So rather than photography, so you open up the newspaper and it could be the first 10 pages of the newspaper were fashion illustrations. And he would say to me, why don't you go and copy those pictures so you can really learn how to do fashion illustration? Now I'm 8, and I'm like, I didn't really care about if it was much more about the authentic expression. For me at 8, I just wanted to draw and I wanted to go and I didn't care. But he said to me, all of the great artists, all were classically trained. And even, every one of them. So, and then they aberrated, even he said Picasso got to the simplicity of a 1 line or 2 line because he understood the foundations. And he would go through all of these great artists that had all been classically trained and then aberrated. So I've never, I've never kind of known the answer. I just have never known the answer, about, not like there's an answer, but I think it's a great inquiry. So I love, how do we learn from the past, honor the past, and especially with art as an expression of culture. At least that's been my orientation, that when you really find out the role that it's played and the significance, and we're living through that right now. So maybe that's also part of the way you're doing art as an expression of the cultural changes that we're all going through. Like in, 50 years, they'll look back at what you were doing the way we look back. So, I don't know if that's making sense, but it's some way of honoring history and making history all at the same time as a leader in a whole other form of expression.
I think one way to look at this recently past century, recently defunct century, in art and other things too, is that we threw over the past and made I was going to say a fetish, but that's probably not quite right. The word, not quite the right word. In a real sense, we made a practice of destruction, of taking away things, getting rid of things. I was reading an interview with David Hockney recently, artist I admire very much. And he was saying abstraction is dead. I think there were some other things that went into that, but one thing he was pointing out was that one thing we did in the 20th century was it got rid of all those shadows. It's kind of I think some people would consider that an eccentric point of view, but that's one thing that we did. So we flattened things out. We took away that whole elaborate construction. At the same time, we took away the way of educating artists. We made the moment, the highest value was placed on that moment when something new comes into being, rather than that laborious training, all of that sort of thing. You would think that school would be the sort of the guardian of traditions, and in some ways that's true. But the new traditions are what the schools now are the guardians of, and the new traditions are in fact that holy grail of upending everything, of not doing what has traditionally been done. The highest value is on complete originality with no predecessors, no precursors.
By the way,
it's funny in a way because it's sort of, it's turned upside down from the way it was. I don't say that this is wrong or it shouldn't be. It's so much bigger than any one of us. I believe that, this is, I don't know that it was inevitable, but, that it's got an inevitability now. We're not changing that which happened. The only question for us is now what? And my answer, not my only answer, but I think what's happening is retrenchment. We're looking back. We're looking to what we can bring into our new art that connects us with the past. I think it's very important. I don't know that it's the right thing, but I know that it's the right thing for me.
How do you see that manifesting in your art?
Well, I look at my work as being digital painting. I do think of it being in the tradition of painting, even though it's only late in the game that it actually sort of becomes something that you can hang on a wall.
So first of all, thank you for just sharing this whole perspective. Because to me, it is the inquiry about creativity and expression and form. If you're expressing something, like you said, it may or may not defy the paradigm that we all have about what art is and artwork and acquisition. Can you hang it on the wall? Does it have timelessness? Is there a physicality to it? And when you're talking about the article with Hawking, that how much of what we're living in now is the obsession with immediate gratification. Maybe not our generation, but I certainly look at younger generations. And when the new, what's hot, is deified, it's immediate. So I don't know if there's a connection, by the way, because the immediate gratification and the quick hit and the fast rush is very different than the sustainability that it takes to develop oneself as a human being, mastery, the discipline, the boredom of continuity and consistency, of doing what you don't want to do because there's a big picture on behalf of you doing it, and then you just do it anyway. That's, I think that I don't know, but that's what I hear in all of that.
Well, I don't know either, but let me suggest something.
It was just a great thinking point.
Yes, I agree. I was going to say was I have a question. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
The question is, isn't that what an older generation always says to a younger generation? Isn't that the critique of youth? So I'm not, by saying that, I'm not saying that it always is. Some version, something that sounds like that, is always in that relationship between the younger generation says the older generation has stultified. They've gotten stuck and they're obsessed with their rules and their restrictions and their don't let the youth be fulfilled and expressed. And then it's the opposite for the old ones. The youth don't respect the past. They throw out the good things that the past has achieved, and in favor of these dubious achievements that you get from improvisation and immediate action. But I think that's true in general, and that was always true. But maybe more so in the 20th century.
You know what I was just thinking there's the poem Father William, right? When I was 120, my father said to me, do you know the poem?
It sounds familiar, but I'm afraid I don't recall it.
Okay. It of the essentially when I was 120, my father said to me, and it speaks to youth, and then as he progresses. And I think that the end of it, as he became his father's age, he said, and oh, tis true, tis true.
Yes, he became his father.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a myth, you know. I don't mean it's not true.
No, no,
A myth is an old, yeah.
But I think it's in the context of this conversation that how can the arts, again, because that's also, you know, my interest as yours, how do we use the arts to bridge those gaps? It's kind of what you were talking about being in grad school. Or, you know, I mean, I just think that it's whether it's fashion, you know, it just doesn't matter, you know, because I think about fashion a lot of times. And you know, when I don't look at myself in any, you know, it's kind of what we talked about as a number. And then I kind of look and go, what are they thinking? Like, I get it, but there's nothing really even attractive or flattering or interesting about that. It's not like it's out, you know, that the costuming is outrageous because I'm like a fashionista. I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I look at it and I have to say, am I getting old? Oh my God, do I sound like my mother? Well, yes, that is just, there's nothing aesthetically that I can see in that does anything for me. You know, and that could be an age conversation, or maybe it's just a bunch of junk. You know,
maybe.
so who knows? You know, yeah. It's awesome. So it's almost at the top of our time, and
just getting started, huh?
I know. We could go on for hours, and maybe we'll come back again. So, if there's one thing, like a piece of wisdom, advice for, you know, artists, young and old, the a tip, just a mindset, that because I think, Stephen, you know, this is why I wanted to be with you, because there's an agelessness and timelessness in your thinking. And then, as I said, that you're in vehicles that are not traditional, that people are buying and want what you are creating, and they want to be washed over and own your pieces of art. Is there a tip or a piece of advice or just something that you would share with our listeners and our viewers?
Yeah. I don't know if it's wisdom, but this is something that I embrace. I think it would be useful to at least have in mind. Thing is, you know, there's a learning curve. I don't know if the learning curve, you know, ever flattens out. Probably, you know, you shouldn't let it flatten out, but I'm not sure if you have a lot to say about that either. But anyway, this is the advice or the wisdom or whatever you call it. And that's whatever it is you're working on, take it to completion. And sometimes, you know, it sucks or it's going to suck. It doesn't always turn out that way, by the way. Sometimes you get to the end of it, you know, and I mean, for me, I produce a lot of digital image files. So, you know, I'll get to the end of something, I'll complete it, you know, save it in the cloud and move on, you know, maybe try to get, you know, salvage the morning with trying to get something different, something else done. And then 2 weeks later, I'm looking at it, I'm going, it's not too bad, you know, but take it through to completion, even if it does suck. And they, you will have things that suck, but the more you take it to completion, the higher your percentage is going to get.
Right.
I'm convinced of that. It's that last inch that makes the biggest difference in your development. The final inch. If you ever read Solzhenitsyn, you'll find that in there. Anyway.
Love that.
So to sum up, that piece of wisdom is go the final inch.
So one of the things that I love to ask is also, and this is, I'm going to paraphrase you, if there were an action that from this conversation, that we could throw out together to our listeners and our viewers, it could be for the next 24 hours. What's one thing that's outstanding that you could move forward or bring to completion? Like that final inch where you've been procrastinating. And not in a week and not in a month, but to look for something within 24 hours. And it could be something really simple. So out of this conversation, I really want to throw that out to everyone who's viewing and listening, to go be bold and take that final inch and take one thing that's been incomplete and finish it. It doesn't mean it's the end. And I think that's what's so brilliant about what Stephen just said. Bring it to completion. You can go back. You can go back and reevaluate whatever it is. Or if it's fix it, reorganize the closet and you've been procrastinating. You can go back and reorganize it if you want, but at least take the action. Do something that will move something forward in your life. Does that capture that?
Sure does, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now you're making me want to go do that.
Good. Yeah, we can both do that. We could take something on, in the next 24 hours. I'll work on my budget that I've been procrastinating about.
Oh, God.
Put another piece of that. So is there, and Stephen, just anything that you want to say in leaving this time together?
No, just I always feel in discussions like this that there's another discussion to be had, and that we've opened up more things than we've sort of covered.
Right. And maybe part of the art of aliveness and our creativity and our souls soaring and having joy and fun is that space of discovery. And that one conversation, instead of closing doors, opens more doors and expands us in our lives. And then there's an experience of profound curiosity and vitality. Maybe that's what aliveness is about, is that to me, it's a spiritual experience. And that's how I'm left with you, like, oh my goodness, we've only just scratched the surface. Thank you for joining the Art of Aliveness Chronicles with Annie B. I'm Ann Borow-Lawrence. Join us next time for more great interviews with inspiring artists, all backgrounds, shapes, and sizes, where we will be investigating just what is it that keeps people alive, vital, and vibrant in mind, body, and spirit throughout their lifetimes. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with your friends. Please like the podcast series, and please do subscribe. With much love and gratitude, and see you the next time.